Don't be fooled. You don't owe anything to anyone. Of course, don't walk out of the grocery store without paying and quote me. Thing is, too many people have gotten overly confident with expecting way too much from you. And when you don't deliver, somehow you're the bad guy. Today, we clear things up. If you know you're meant for more than being taken for granted, then this is the video for you.
It's a life full of hope. It's a life full of joy. No more fear in my corner. I'm already fulfilled.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A Life Full of Joys, where I share about love, joy, peace, and freedom until your cup runneth over. As per my intro, today I'll share about 5 things that you most definitely do not owe anyone, and I promise you, number 5 will be the most freeing. Without further ado, let us start with the first thing on the list: your attention. I cannot say this enough. Attention is currency. Whatever you give your attention to, you help grow. For example, I'm very thankful to you for choosing to be here because your attention helps this channel grow. Time, energy, access, they all come as a package to everything you choose to give your attention to, which is why you should give it not because you have to, but because you choose to, intentionally. We all have been told how giving our attention is a sign of respect and care. However, withdrawing your attention isn't necessarily disrespectful. Rather, it is a sign of self respect. We've all had times when our mind begins to drift and we start to feel disconnected from the current situation. In those moments, questions like, why am I here? What am I gaining from being here? Am I building anything while being here? Are valid if you're someone who wants to live intentionally. Therefore, we need to keep this in mind. Respect and attention often work together, but they are not the same. If you're not careful with that subtle difference, you will fall victim to people who have been socialized to guilt trip others in order to receive attention in the name of respect or even love. As mentioned in my last video, most of us have not been taught to navigate our emotions in the healthiest of ways. Therefore, there will be people who will request your attention not to edify you, but only for you to witness their toxic behavior. And giving it to them will leave you feeling worse than doom scrolling for hours on end. So do gatekeep your attention. Otherwise, you'll be the only person paying the price. But what about when the other person asks you to be patient? Well, this leads us to the second thing you don't owe anyone: transformation. We often see this in relationships. One person does wrong by the other, then they beg for another chance, promising change. But change doesn't happen overnight, if ever, which is why you need to identify your deal breakers. It is important for you to ask yourself, what if this person never changes? Will that be okay for you? You are not put on this earth to change others. Yes, we all hope to be impactful in life. However, we are not responsible for other people actually enacting change in their life. So give the advice, the encouragement, the blueprint, but you do not owe anyone to stick around until they wake up and start building, especially if the price of keeping someone in your life is your physical safety or your mental health. It is not up for negotiation. You are not that person's parent, therefore, you are not responsible for their upbringing. And even when you are put in charge of someone's development in some measure, you are still allowed to have limits. I remember this one social worker who was in charge of a case that my family ended up being related to. After some time, we inquired about the case because we were hearing that the child in that case was no longer going to school, which naturally made us curious. When we asked the social worker, she told us she did not know anything because as soon as her direct responsibility was done, she was out. Why? Because the dynamics in that family were impossible to deal with. I'm telling you this story for you to see that even in such a sensitive case, it is possible for you to remove yourself. Sacrifice is a beautiful thing. But when it comes to something as long term and uncertain as someone else's transformation, you need pit stops in order to think it over again. You don't owe anyone unlimited patience while they stay the same, because whatever effort you pour into someone for them to change will also change you. So make sure that change helps make you grow and not tear you down. But let's say you already know you don't owe anyone to stick around for their character development. Did you know you also do not owe them a reaction? When I made the video about entering one's villain era, I mentioned how people want you to believe in them and be concerned about them. Don't quote me on this, but I genuinely believe that this allows them to think they're still redeemable, they're not so bad, and still worthy of community, even if they don't plan on changing. So, even when they don't mean to hurt you, they want you to be hurt. They want you to be disappointed, but it is for the sake of their own satisfaction. Therefore, take away the satisfaction. Don't let them see your reaction. Take a moment to breathe and choose your response. Say something like, I'll take some time to think about it and get back to you later, and send tentos on it. This allows you to not play into their hand and give them the reaction they crave, but it also allows you to honor your timing in processing whatever is happening. Even if they try to push back and ask, well, aren't you feeling anything in this, that, and the third? Simply say, I'm not feeling anything right now, but I'll get back to it later and I will come back to you with my final thoughts. Even if your heart is shattered, don't engage. Let them be stressed out about what those final thoughts are going to be. I cannot stress this enough. Never react to anything, always respond in your timing because life is like chess. Don't let them know what you're thinking. Let them witness your next move. And not letting people know so easily about you is exactly what we are going to talk about next because the next thing you do not owe anyone is your information. Privacy is different from secrecy or dishonesty. Privacy is healthy protection of your personal information that does not threaten others, whereas secrecy is about intentionally hiding information which could impact others negatively or betray their trust. In an era of oversharing for the sake of authenticity and honesty, I want to suggest otherwise. Keep your business to yourself. Unless they are a licensed professional or someone who can offer guidance to you, there are some things I genuinely believe you do not need to share with anyone. I remember sharing one of the most impactful events of my life with one of my friends. At the time, she wasn't even my closest friend, and it was just a random evening while we were talking on the phone. Even though the setting wasn't the best, I felt extremely safe sharing this with her because I had just witnessed her handling something similar with a lot of grace and love. Before I knew it, I found myself telling her, and the way that she handled the conversation is what actually convinced me to start therapy a couple days later. So, I'm not telling you to not trust anyone. This is not my philosophy. I'm simply saying use your judgment. A couple weeks ago, I was out eating with my brother and that friend that I just mentioned, and we began debating on the topic of whether or not you should share your traumas with your partner. Feel free to share your take in the comments. They both suggested that we should share our traumas with our partners so that they would be able to understand us better. On the other hand, I advocated that if I ask you to do something or not do something, you do not need a background story to honor my wishes. For example, if I tell you not to yell at me, I feel unsafe, or yelling is verbal violence, is reason enough for you not to do it. But then again, go ahead and share in the comments what you think. Sharing with the right person is blissful, but I have also seen people weaponize what others told them in confidence during arguments or even make light of it through jokes. So, this is my advice: refrain from sharing just because the vibes are right, and remember, disclosure does not guarantee closeness, and trust is not automatically given, it is earned. Now, let's move on to the final thing you do not owe anyone, and that is an explanation. Understand this: you can be clear without being understood. What I've come to realize is that often when people are not understanding what you're saying or requesting, it is not because you're not clear enough, it is because they get caught up in their own thoughts. Usually, thoughts about what they think is right or how they are feeling in that moment. to be precise. We often talk about how when someone is speaking to you, you shouldn't be having a conversation on the side or be focused on your phone. But you know what else you shouldn't be doing? Overthinking. Otherwise, whatever the person is saying will be obliterated by the conversation in your mind. Once you understand this phenomenon, you will no longer be bending over backwards in order to make sure that people understand you. I'm still perfecting my craft, but the level that I'm at right now is to realize how many times I say the same thing in one conversation. Although I may doubt myself at times, I often realize that I am in fact over explaining. But what leads us to this? For some of us, it might be force of habit, but I've also come to realize that some people join conversations not to communicate, but to debate. My advice to you for when you encounter someone like this is let them have it. It's very similar to what we saw in point number 3. Some people will only realize the foolishness of their behavior in silence. As long as you're still engaging with them, they will believe their argument to make the most sense and to be worth defending. Let me illustrate with a story. I remember arguing with a coworker about someone who was working both under them and under me. It began peacefully with them expressing a concern and asking me a question about a specific situation. I answered, and in turn, they sent me a long paragraph, and at the end of the paragraph, there it was again, the same question. Confused, I answered the same thing but reformulated my answer, thinking that perhaps the first time wasn't clear. What do you think they did? You guessed it right. They asked me the same question a third time. Dumbfounded, I answered again, and when they asked me the same question for a fourth time, I dropped it. In response to me dropping it, they got offended, called me unreasonable, and even attacked my character. Now, I won't bore you with the details, but in the end, everything ended up well, with them admitting that they were expecting a specific answer from me all throughout the conversation. I had been completely obliterated by the conversation in their mind. Now, this conversation would have been a lot more excruciating had I actively argued with them until the very end. And I don't want that for you. So let this be your takeaway. Just because someone doesn't understand doesn't mean you owe it to them to explain. It is okay to leave them with what you've said and resume the conversation only after they have thought about it and are ready to move forward. When you look at everything we talked about today, what they all have in common is access. And access is not something you owe, it is something you choose. This is all for today's video, but if there is anything else you have been doing in order to protect your energy and set healthier boundaries, do not hesitate to put it in the comments below. As per usual, thank you for sticking around until the very end. I always enjoy the good company, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then. Whether you are withholding access or offering it intentionally, remember, nevertheless, it is a life full of joy. No, you like
It's a life full of hope.
do you like this new
It's a
setup?
life full of joy.
Do you want more clothes?
No more fear in my corner.
More enchilada?
I'm already fulfilled.
I like it.